It's a story of war and peace. President Donald Trump has once again used fiery rhetoric against North Korea, threatening Pyongyang with destruction if it continues nuclear provocations. Addressing South Korea's National Assembly, Trump attempted to portray his leadership as much more willing than former US administrations to take military action against the North. This is a very different administration than the United States has had in the past, said Trump, adding, "Do not underestimate us and do not try us."
Trump, who was visiting South Korea, said the US would not be intimidated by the North. In what he called a direct message to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the US president said that North Korea's nuclear weapons were not making them safer, but rather putting Pyongyang in grave danger. He also called on other countries around the world, including China and Russia, to step up their efforts to isolate North Korea by denying it any form of support, supply or acceptance. In response, the North promised to expand its nuclear weapons capabilities. People in Korea have carried on with their lives and watched threat and counter-threat, while at the same time Trump has offered to reach a deal. Yet the message is confusing to observers, as President Trump also called on North Korea's biggest economic supporter, China, as well as Russia, to sever all ties with Pyongyang, including economic ones.
What's the public view on the question of Korean unity? And how does the rest of the world regard Donald Trump's attitude towards Pyongyang? Simple questions with important answers. Many in the South are concerned about Trump's inflammatory comments towards the North. Are the public in South Korea concerned, considering Seoul is just 312 kilometers away from the North Korean border? We asked them. Here's what they told us.
I'm not anxious, never. I'm a man of spirit who'll grab a gun and go fight if war, even like the Korean War, breaks out, even though I'm 70 years old.
I am not worried about it. I don't think Trump will really attack North Korea.
I am anxious, because if Trump attacks North Korea, then North Korea will counterattack. Then people in Seoul will suffer the most damage.
It is scaring me a little bit, but I think the possibility of war is very low, so I don't live in fear.
As time passes, many people argue we need to decide with reason for peace. I think there is no chance a war will begin by such provocations. I think it is a game of chicken. I worry, but I'm not really scared.
He will not do that if he's not mad. If he knows what a big impact inter-Korean relations has, then he would not choose such an option.
No, like other South Korean people, I feel pretty safe and I'm not concerned about war. He always says such words, so I'm not scared.
I think a war will not happen. It would create more damage than expected. First priority is a peaceful resolution every time.
I am a little bit scared because Trump has said a lot of weird things in the past. North Korea may take an action if they keep hearing such rhetoric.
I'm not afraid at all. I think someone should talk at the same level because Kim Jong-un has lost his mind and is crazy. Someone should send a message in such a crazy and strong way. And the US needs to do this because they have the power.
Yes, Korean people are very concerned about Trump's comments. The thing is, we are used to those provocative words from North Korea and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, but this is not the typical case that we see. I mean, usually the U.S. presidents are calm and they're reserved, and because it carries more weight. I mean, any words from the American president carries much more weight. But this time, just listening to what President Trump said, I mean, is just escalating the tensions in the peninsula, and also it seems like, well, whatever the Kim Jong-un said, we can ignore, but anything coming out from the U.S. president, we cannot really ignore, and that's probably why the people are more concerned about what Trump says.
Trump changes his word from one time to another, and he does that a lot. I don't know if you read the transcript of his speech at the South Korean National Assembly. This cannot be seen as a diplomatic speech from a president. This is a speech which is full of hatred, exclusion and contempt. It shows clearly that Trump does not consider North Korea as a potential dialogue partner. He said, "I want to be a friend of Kim Jong-un, but I do not know why he insults me," and goes on. It's hard to see the American government's attitude clearly. But anyway, it's difficult for the US to start a war because of the distinctiveness of the Korean Peninsula. But they have engaged in threatening military actions. For example, B-1B Lancers invaded North Korean airspace last September. This is worrisome. A war can occur unexpectedly. Unforeseen eventualities can cause it. So Trump's administrative words are worrisome.
The South Korean president appears keen on unity between both Korean republics, but this approach seems to draw criticism from President Trump. We asked those most affected for their view, the Korean public.
I would say Trump wants to unify the two Koreas by destroying North Korea.
Trump says tough words because of his low approval ratings in the US.
War and peace is not an all or nothing in the world of politicians, but President Moon Jae-in comes from a position of advocating peace. But Trump cannot ignore the possibility of war, even if he does not want a war on the Korean Peninsula, in case political circumstances change or the level of North Korean nuclear development changes.
I think that it originated from different characteristics. Two presidents walked quite different roads to be a president. I think such conflicts exist naturally because of different characteristics.
There is such disharmony, but I think it's just Trump's threatening words. He does not mean actual war. He's trying not to lose the game of chicken with North Korea.
So he sent a signal to South Korea not to stick to a peaceful way of denuclearization.
Trump uses a madman strategy so far. This is one method of scaring North Korea, considering President Moon Jae-in and all other behavior in the past. Diplomatic issues will not go following the US's wills.
On the contrary, I feel more stability because President Moon Jae criticized Trump, but the US is very influential towards South Korea. There is a room for negotiation, but I am still scared.
I think Trump speaks without deep knowledge about reality in South Korea. I think there is a domestic political intention beneath Trump's words.
Well, this is difficult. It looks like it's a long way to go to unify peacefully. Peaceful living so far cannot make something happen. Past governments did something very far from unification. Our ultimate goal is to become one again by peaceful unification. I think it's wrong to unify with force, like a war or assassinate Kim Jong-un, because it's hard to unify peacefully. What Trump says looks negative to me.
He's a politician and a businessman, so he can say that, but just words are different from taking action. I think it's okay that politicians keep pushing like a businessman.
Well, from the South Korean present perspective, the most important thing is keeping and maintaining peace in the Korean Peninsula. So what he suggests is, well, we can do the maximum pressure, but at the same time, we have to engage with North Korea and bring North Korea to the negotiation table, and that's what he said. From the American perspective, and in this situation that North Korea now is almost finished its ICBM, which can hit the U.S. as a continent, it can be very much more hardline and also hawkish than before. And so that's probably why the Secretary of Defense Mattis and also President Trump, they are very hardline and hawkish, and they are saying. So to them, it may sound like Korea is not very well helping or cooperating with the U.S. And we are not really in perfect harmony or the coordination as they expected. And that's probably why President Trump was a bit critical of President Moon Jae-in being way too soft and dovish to North Korea.
I think there's a different context. We understand Moon Jae-in's words as he says it. It's his pressure though, but it seeks to solve the problem with talks. There is a limit. The purpose of Trump and his administration's diplomacy is not to talk with North Korea. They say talk is pressure. It's diplomacy of isolating North Korea from its surroundings. This is the key of US diplomacy. If North Korea submits because of this, then talk is possible. So the context is different.
President Donald Trump's approval ratings are amongst the lowest for any US president in over 7 decades. Does the Korean public think he should focus more of his energy on addressing that rather than provoking North Korea?
As I said earlier, the US and South Korea cannot give up on each other.
It will have an impact on South Korea to some extent, but I think there is no chance of war.
There were American presidents who boosted their approval ratings by starting a war before Trump. We cannot ignore that possibility completely. But different from the Middle East, there is a US army base in South Korea. They will receive damage if a war occurs, so Trump cannot begin a war easily.
Yes, it would be profitable for him to boost his approval ratings, but he'll lose more if he begins a war. War costs. If Trump can make a reasonable decision, he will not begin a war to boost his approval ratings.
I think such intention exists. American people supported Bush's hard line against Iraq. I think Trump will think about taking a hard line to boost his approval rating.
Trump has spent most of his time talking about trade and economy while visiting South Korea and Japan and doing summits. Military issues are his second priority. I think Trump visits South Korea and Japan as a show to boost his approval ratings. I think Trump's first priority is to create a political show. The issue of North Korea is a means to distract people.
I do not think so. The US will suffer huge damages from a war, and it's impossible to boost his approval ratings in such a way.
All the past presidents of South Korea and the US always begin a war to boost their approval ratings. Everybody uses this strategy to make people one. What I'm most concerned is that I want there to be no chance of war in any situation. Beyond the interests and emotions, I want the US to care about the position of the South Korean people. I don't want them to fight. War should not occur again.
I think sanctions on North Korea are a temporary method. It can change following the situation in North Korea. It is unstable, but it is necessary for some time.
Not at all, because his approval ratings can get higher depending on how he applies his policies. The US economy is getting better, so it may be the case now, but I do not see this as such a bad thing.
Well, I don't really think so. Usually, the domestic job approval rating, that is affected by domestic issues. It's not just the United States, but everywhere in the world. He had some approval rating bump after Syria attack, but it is very different because Syria, the consequences of the attack of Syria and North Korea is totally different. It's very devastating, and North Korea, even though it is a really bad country, but if they do any preemptive strike, that is not just North Korea, but it's also South Korea get affected a lot. It's disastrous. And also the US people, American people, they do not really care that much about the foreign policy. So foreign policy is basically the issue of political elite and policymakers. What they are concerned about is economy and job creation and anything, and also this time is a polarization within the society. So that should be related with the approval rating of President Trump. And if he wants to bump his approval rating, he has to solve the domestic issues, not the using the foreign policy and foreign issues to resolve that.
There's no 100% answer for everything. Trump's approval ratings were under 30%. This is a traditional tactic, using external factors to enhance or maintain domestic political support. Most political powers use this strategy. Trump has this reason. He can be easily attracted to this method because of diverse factors. This might be dangerous.
The population of North Korea is 25 million, and for South Korea it's 51 million. The country has been divided for 72 years. It is reported that the North Korean army has 1.2 million active troops, with a reserve of 6.3 million, while America has an estimated 38,000 military personnel in South Korea. The number of nuclear weapons deployed in the area on either side is unknown.
In Trump's recent speech, he called on Russia and China to distance themselves from Pyongyang. What does the public in Korea think is the motive of trying to isolate North Korea? And will it help or make the situation worse?
I think China and Russia should do that, implement sanctions. The reason is China cannot give up on the US. China will receive economic damage if it cannot get the technology from the US and South Korea, so they will cooperate on the sanctions of North Korea.
According to some news reports, it seems that China is already cooperating with sanctions on North Korea. China said that they will penalize companies which have relations with North Korea. So there is a high probability China will cooperate and Russia is a variable.
China and Russia have not cooperated in sanctions on North Korea so far. North Korea changes its attitude slowly by its threatening words. They will not cooperate much as the US wants. It is not profitable for them. There have been no provocations from North Korea for the past month. If there was provocation from North, China and Russia would cooperate more because it is threatening. But North Korea is silent recently. They will not have active cooperation.
There will be no big changes. China and Russia support North Korea to some extent, even though they become democratic, but they will not be involved a lot.
Maybe I think China and Russia will not put such big sanctions on the state that provides the most military advantage. They will accept the military advantage and take small economic actions.
If they do that, it will not change because of Trump's remarks. It demands them to change their ideologies. It will not just mean abandoning North Korea in terms of international cooperation. It means abandoning communism. It will take a long time. I do not think it will happen easily.
China will have a huge impact on sanctions on North Korea, but it pretends to do it and does not actually do it. All states seek their own national interests. Trump is not alone. He's a lot like many weapon sellers. They say they will do something, but it seems they will not do anything because they earn profits with a divided Korea peninsula. If two Koreas are united, they lose their market because of this, but they pretend to do something, but they did not do anything actually. Everybody will think the same.
Well, the Russia actually showed that the sanction, they show some worriness that they are not really sure about the sanction is very effective. And China seems to be more cooperating than before, but I don't really think they are going to help or, go to the par with the expectation that the United States has. I mean, basically, the North Korea is a buffer zone for China, and they need them. What they want most is North Korea stay as it is and the status quo. So the expectation level is pretty different. And what they really never want to see is the collapse of North Korea in regime. And if they cut off everything and follow whatever sanctions the international community wants from China, that actually means that in the end, the collapse of North Korea. So China probably shows some gesture of cooperating, but not the full at the full level.
I cannot find anything special about Trump's visit to Japan, South Korea and China, including Russia. Existing stances are confirmed. We can say about details of the Indo-Pacific policy. China and Russia adhere to basic stands about the issue of sanctions on North Korea. China's stance is they will follow the UN's resolution on North Korea, because they made a promise to the international community. So they say, we will do that, but do not ask more. And the Korean Peninsula problem should be solved through dialogue and negotiations. This is China's basic stance. But China will not ignore the UN resolutions completely, as in the past, because China seeks to become a new big state and overcome the US. It will not be easy for China to support North Korea while facing international mistrust. They will do what they say. It will take time to figure out how much pressure and threat will be and how much it will make North Korea suffer.
Donald Trump has insulted the Democratic People's Republic of Korea leadership in the international arena on more than one occasion. How does the Korean public think the rest of the world perceives his actions?
Yes, I think a strong line against North Korea is good, because this way, South Korea-US alliance can survive.
It did not touch my heart, and I do not feel that something threatening will actually happen to me. I think Trump uses tough words because he thinks that this is the way that they can change North Korea.
Trump was a businessman. He's had such an aggressive attitude as a businessman before he became president. He has used that technique and language after he became president, but I don't think this will lead to war.
Those words are well suited to him. He has disposition of a businessman. It's too early to judge.
I don't know why President Trump does this, but the most important precondition is that such a thing will not happen, because it is inside of my state. And even if the US has a military agreement with South Korea, nothing can happen only by following the will of the US.
Such reaction is possible. American presidents have in the past attacked Iraq to turn people's gaze from domestic issues overseas, like when they attacked Iraq. The only remaining axis of evil is North Korea. He can say that, but there is a low realistic possibility.
I think those words are not positive expressions. I think there are political intentions.
Personally, it makes me worry because North Korea is close, but I don't think there will be a war.
I want people who listen to those words to accept it as it is. People are sensitive to what is being broadcast on media, but it's not certain what will happen 1 or 2 years later. I think the media is a problem, which is very developed and spread words very quickly. I'm not sensitive about that, but I think something else may come.
Well, this is quite shocking, right? I mean, you do not really expect to hear the kind of words coming out of the American president. We never saw that, and we never had the experience. Even George W. Bush did not do it. I mean, he did say something bad, but it was not at that level, I think. And that's probably why Korean people are very much concerned about it. So we have some, although this time the Korea summit was, I would say, quite successful, but people still have half doubt, because we know that Trump can be very, changing and flicking. So, and then the words are too provocative, and well, the outside of Korea, the people can be, oh, he's saying something really provocative, and the words not really appropriate for the president. But for Korean people, it can be very significant because we have North Korea. So we just hope that, not that much inflammatory words and provoke Kim Jong-un, because in that case, we do not have that much of trust in, not just in Kim Jong-un, but also President Trump. And that's really bad for the relationship between the US and Korea.
It's very inappropriate. Documents written by North Korea look pathetic to me sometimes. They write their statements or policies with very inappropriate words. Both of them are doing the same thing. Two political systems. At least the US has put pressure on North Korea to diversify its ways, but it did not react in such a substantive way as this. I think Trump's personal character plays a huge role. I heard that his aides see his tweet when they open their eyes in the morning to read his mind, and they are very busy responding to Trump. Trump hasn't filled his cabinet. It's a year ago that he became president. I think Trump's administration is very weak in terms of political capability and legitimacy.
Trump has warned North Korea not to make a fatal miscalculation and advised it not to underestimate the United States. He cited the heavy US military presence in the Korean peninsula, including aircraft carriers and fighter jets, saying, "I want peace through strength."
Donald Trump appears determined to display American military might in what has already become a tense situation. Yet his approach could be failing, as the new president of South Korea and the majority of the population there seem to prefer better relations between the North and the South. It's a saga of war and peace, where the American president points to war while the Korean people pray for peace.